For 4,500 years, the Great Sphinx has stared into the sunrise, guarding a secret so profound that modern science refuses to let us step inside. As the first light of dawn crests the horizon of the Giza Plateau, it illuminates the weathered features of a titan. This, you see, is not just a monument of stone and sand. It is the ultimate sentinel, a silent witness to the very birth of civilization. But while the world gazes at its stoic face, a deeper mystery lies hidden beneath the bedrock, far from the reach of the scorching Egyptian sun. The sheer scale of the Sphinx is enough to humble the modern soul, yet its greatest enigmas are not found in its height or its length, but in its echoes. For decades, sophisticated seismic technology and ground-penetrating radar have peered through the limestone, revealing something the history books, well, they simply cannot explain. Deep beneath the paws of this colossus, the scans show clear geometric voids, hollow chambers and winding tunnels that defy the official narrative of a solid stone base. The most tantalizing evidence points to a specific location, the area directly beneath the left paw. Here, the readings suggest a threshold, a forbidden door leading into the dark. While explorers and independent researchers have clamored for a closer look, the gates to the subterranean world remain firmly shut. Official channels offer silence or denial, yet the data remains, whispering of a hidden archive, or perhaps a forgotten doom. We are standing on the edge of a discovery that could rewrite everything we know about our past, staring at a door we are told does not exist, yet one we are strictly forbidden to open. What lies in the silence, beneath the sand? And why, I ask you, is the world being kept from the truth that waits behind the stone? To truly understand the silence beneath the sand, well, we must first look at the story we were all told as children. For over a century, you see, the official narrative has been carved into our history books, just as firmly as the monument itself. Mainstream archaeology maintains that the Great Sphinx is a triumph of the Fourth Dynasty, a monumental portrait of the pharaoh Khafre, built around 2500 BC to stand eternal guard over his funerary complex. It is a tale of bronze tools, thousands of laborers, and a singular imperial vision. But look beyond the postcards. Look at the stone itself, right? Mysterious. For decades, a growing group of geologists and independent researchers has noticed a chilling inconsistency. While the pyramids nearby show signs of wind and sand abrasion, the body of the Sphinx tells a different story entirely. Deep, undulating fissures run vertically down its limestone flanks, patterns that geologists claim are the unmistakable fingerprints of heavy, rhythmic rainfall. Now, this presents a staggering problem for the official timeline. The Giza Plateau has been a parched desert for over 5,000 years. You know, to find a climate wet enough to cause this kind of deep-set water erosion, we would have to travel back to the end of the last ice age, to a time 10,000 years ago, long before the Egyptians were said to have possessed the tools or the society to create such a wonder. If the Sphinx was already ancient when Khafre claimed the throne, we are forced to ask, whose face did it originally wear, and what exactly did they build it to protect?
The official narrative begins to crumble like sun-scorched clay when faced with these geological facts. We are told the Sphinx is a tomb or a guardian, but its scars suggest it is a survivor of a lost epoch, a prehistoric monolith that has watched empires rise and fall like the shifting dunes. And yet, despite these physical contradictions, the gates of mainstream academia remain locked. The more we analyze the stone, the more the pharaoh's portrait feels like a convenient mask. But the mask is starting to slip, revealing a truth that is far more unsettling than a simple tomb. Because if the Sphinx is older than history, then the chambers buried beneath its paws aren't just empty rooms. They are time capsules. And there is one specific discovery made in the 1990s that the authorities would prefer we simply forget. To truly understand why the world's eyes remain fixed on the paws of the Sphinx, we must look back to a time when the desert was viewed not through the lens of modern ground-penetrating radar, but through the eyes of a mystic. You see, in the 1930s, while mainstream archaeologists were busy cataloging pottery shards, a man named Edgar Cayce, known to history as the Sleeping Prophet, began to utter words that would haunt the Giza Plateau for a century. Now, Cayce did not claim to be a historian. He was a man who entered deep, trance-like states, claiming to tap into a collective consciousness of the universe. And from that void, he brought back a terrifyingly specific vision. He spoke of a hall of records, not a mere burial chamber or a hidden treasury of gold, but a subterranean library. According to Cayce, this vault was a time capsule, meticulously sealed by the survivors of a lost civilization, a people who lived long before the pharaohs ever drew breath. He described a chamber situated right between the paws of the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid, containing the entire history of a forgotten epoch. Within its stone walls, he claimed, lay the secrets of human origins, advanced technologies, and the wisdom of a world destroyed by cataclysm. To Cayce, the Sphinx wasn't just a monument to a king's ego, it was a guardian, standing eternal watch over the archives of humanity's true ancestry. For the academic world, of course, this was nothing more than the rambling of a clairvoyant, but for a generation of explorers, it was a map. The psychological impact of Cayce's prophecy was profound. It shifted the narrative of the Giza Plateau from a graveyard of kings to a treasure map of lost knowledge. It sparked a clandestine race, fueled by the haunting possibility that beneath the scorching Egyptian sands, the answers to our greatest mysteries were waiting to be read. For decades, these seekers were mocked, their dreams dismissed as mere fantasy. They were told that the bedrock beneath the Sphinx was solid, unbroken by the hands of man. But as the 20th century drew to a close, technology began to catch up with the vision. In the 1990s, the laughter of the skeptics suddenly stopped. Because when the first seismic pulses were sent into the earth beneath those massive limestone paws, they didn't hit solid rock. They hit a void. And what the instruments revealed? Well, it was a shape that looked far too intentional to be a fluke of nature.
The desert sand has a way of swallowing the truth. But you see, it cannot hide from the persistent echo of sound. For decades, the claims of hidden chambers were dismissed. Actually, they were laughed at as the fever dreams of mystics and treasure hunters. But as the 20th century progressed, the era of trust but verify arrived at the Giza Plateau, and the investigation moved from the realm of prophecy to the cold, hard reality of science. You know, the search didn't begin with shovels or dynamite, but with pulses of energy sent deep into the ancient limestone. As early as the 1920s, curious minds began to suspect the Sphinx was more than a solid monolith. But it wasn't until the late 1980s that technology finally caught up with the mystery. Using sophisticated ground-penetrating radar and seismic refraction tests, geologists began to peer through the stone almost as if it were glass. The data that returned was undeniable. The bedrock was not a solid uniform mass. It was riddled with what scientists call anomalies. The scans reveal 3 distinct areas of interest that defied any natural explanation. First, there was a vertical shaft leading down through the very top of the Sphinx's head. Second, a mysterious hollow cavity was detected near the rear of the creature's massive body. But it was the third discovery, the one that sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Directly beneath the weathered stone of the left paw, the instruments hit something staggering, a massive, perfectly rectangular chamber. This was no jagged fissure or natural air pocket, right? It was a structured void, sitting approximately 20 feet below the surface and measuring nearly 30 by 40 feet. It was a room that, according to the seismic signatures, appeared to have been carved with intentional geometric precision. The evidence was no longer a matter of folklore, it was a matter of physics. The pulses of the radar had bounced off a hollow space that, well, it shouldn't exist according to the official history of the site. The data proved the doors were there. The technology showed exactly where the ground gave way to the unknown. Yet, despite the world's leading geophysicists confirming these readings, the progress suddenly stopped. The sensors were packed away, and the rectangular chamber under the left paw remained undisturbed, a ghost in the machine of modern history. If the science is clear and the location is pinpointed, we have to ask, why the world has been forbidden from turning the key. Because, as it turns out, the more the scientists looked, the more the authorities began to pull back the veil. And the reason for the secrecy, well, it might just be hidden in a discovery that was made just a few years later, one that was caught on film before it was quickly hushed up. Grandly, enter the era of the Iron Gate of Egyptian archaeology. You see, in the late 1990s, the Giza Plateau became a fortress of secrets, overseen by the most powerful man in antiquity, Dr. Zahi Hawass. Under his watch, the hunt for the Sphinx's hidden chamber transitioned from a scientific endeavor into something far more guarded and far more mysterious.
Equipped with fiber optic cameras and ground-penetrating radar, teams began to probe the depths beneath the paws and the tail of the great stone beast. In one instance, cameras were lowered into narrow, vertical shafts that cut deep into the limestone bedrock. The monitors flickered with grainy gray images of a descent into the dark. For a moment, it seemed the world was on the verge of seeing the impossible. But as the lens approached what appeared to be a structured right-angled void, a clear sign of human masonry, the feed was cut. When the reports were finally released, the findings were dismissed as nothing more than natural fissures or water-eroded cracks in the stone. Yet, the scientists who were there whispered a different story. They spoke of drill bits that snapped against materials far harder than limestone. They spoke of electromagnetic readings that went haywire as they neared the suspected chamber, as if something beneath the sand was actively interfering with their gear. Then came the silence. Permits that had been held by international universities for decades were suddenly revoked. Teams from Florida State University and the Shore Foundation, who had pinpointed the rectangular anomaly under the left paw, were told their work was finished. The official word was that the Sphinx was too fragile for further exploration, yet at the same time, massive iron gates were installed over the entrance to the shafts. A bureaucratic wall had been built around the stone one. Why would a natural fissure require a locked iron door and a permanent security detail? I mean, the trail of the Hawass files suggests that the authorities didn't just find a hole in the ground, they found something that didn't fit the history books. But as the official gates slammed shut, a new question emerged from the dust. If the chamber is truly empty, why go to such lengths to keep the world from seeing inside? Perhaps the answer lies not in what they found, but in a discovery made by a different team in a different part of the plateau that changed everything we thought we knew about the Sphinx's true age. To the casual observer, you see, the gates and padlocks surrounding the Sphinx are there to protect the stone from the elements. But to the seeker of lost truths, they represent something far more chilling, an iron curtain of antiquities. We have to ask ourselves a difficult question. Why, in an age of ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging, is the most iconic monument on Earth still shrouded in state-sponsored secrecy? The resistance we see today isn't just logistical, it is psychological. Modern Egyptology is a house of cards, built on a very specific, a very rigid timeline. It tells us a story of linear progress, that civilization rose from primitive tribes to the builders of the pyramids in just a few short centuries. But if that secret door leads to evidence of a pre-flood culture, a civilization that flourished 10,000 years before the first pharaoh ever wore a crown, the entire foundation of our history collapses. Academic careers, million-dollar textbooks, even national identities are all anchored to the belief that we already know the Sphinx's origin story. To admit there is a chamber filled with the records of an older, perhaps more advanced world, would be to admit that the experts have been wrong for over a century. This is what some call the strategy of silence. It is far easier for those in power to deny the existence of a void than to explain the impossible artifacts that might be resting inside it. In this light, the secret door beneath the Sphinx's paw is more than just a physical barrier of limestone and granite. It is a conceptual one. It is the boundary between the history we are comfortable with and a truth that would shatter our understanding of the human story. The authorities claim they are protecting the monument from the world, but perhaps they are protecting the world from a reality it is not yet ready to face. Yet, as the official narrative continues to crack under the weight of mounting evidence, one final mystery remains. If the legendary Hall of Records is truly there, and if it contains the lost wisdom of a forgotten epoch, what exactly are they waiting for?
because there is one final piece of evidence buried not in the shifting sands, but in the very stars that align above the Giza Plateau, and it points to a date we were never supposed to discover. To find the answer, we must return to the very heart of the monument, to the massive granite slab resting eternally between its baws. You see, the dream stela tells the story of a young prince, Thutmose IV, who fell asleep in the Sphinx's shadow after a long hunt. He claimed the great beast spoke to him in his dreams, promising him the crown of Egypt if he would only clear away the choking sands. But perhaps, just perhaps, the Sphinx was asking for more than just physical liberation. Perhaps it was a plea for recognition. For centuries, we have viewed the Sphinx as a mere relic of vanity, a tomb for a long-dead king. But as the official narrative continues to crumble, a different truth emerges. The Sphinx is not a grave, it is a sentinel. It is a silent protector standing guard over a legacy that defies our current understanding of time. It is a library in stone, a biological and mathematical archive carved into the very bedrock of our world. If the legendary Hall of Records truly exists beneath that left paw, and many believe it does, it is more than just a collection of artifacts. It is a mirror. It likely holds the blueprints of who we were before the Great Flood, and more importantly, the map of where we are destined to go. But you see, a door can only be opened when the key is turned, and perhaps we, as a civilization, are not yet the key. We are still evolving, still learning to look past the shadows of our own making. Until the day the stone finally yields, the Sphinx remains the world's most magnificent locked door. It is a silent witness, weathered by the winds of millennia, waiting for a generation worthy of its secrets. A generation that looks at the stars not with wonder, but with the recognition of an ancient home.
The mystery remains buried in the profound silence of the Giza Plateau. Tell me, what do you believe is waiting for us behind that left paw? Is it the lost wisdom of Atlantis, or a truth even more profound? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you are ready to journey deeper into the mysteries of our past, subscribe to join us on the next expedition into the unknown.